We have 3 that did Lilith. I actually really like this depiction of Lilith. I think it's really beautiful. I also love this depiction of Lilith. Equality. She looks young. I like the that typical Da Vinci's. I think it's Leonardo da Vinci with the man, the way the things are, and then having her standing in front there. I do think it's really powerful. I actually quite like this image. This one certainly brings up the feeling of the Garden of Eden and the snake here, and I think she looks really powerful. So I'm actually not opposed to any of those. Oh, sorry, and here is Lilith. This is really beautiful with the skull here. Middle Eastern goddess of abundance, fertility, and fecundity, the giver of agriculture to humans. The first woman created and the first wife of Adam. She refused to be subordinate to Adam in any way. Lilith is associated with the owl, a figure of darkness and deep wisdom, for she is also a goddess of death and transformation. She is sometimes represented as a demonic figure, for her dark wisdom and her sexual energy can be very threatening. So you have her with a skull in her hand and kind of like owl feathers all around her. Next we have Maat. Maat. I really don't have anything against any of these except for, again, that one. But, sometimes you have to fight for justice, and she looks like she's out there fighting for justice and fairness. They're just different. This we can definitely see that holding the heart against the feather, weighing it's got a bird in it, and the feather. You do have the Egyptian hieroglyphics here. This idea of truth, fairness, justice. So I think these all work. She's just, she's on the battlefield fighting for justice. Maeve, responsibility. And this one has Maeve as cycles and ribbons. Rhythms. I love her face. Again, she looks like an older woman, and she's fighting or has her sword, but she also has the idea of the cow here. So I do really like her quite a lot. I think she, for me, speaks the most of Maeve. So then we have Mary. We actually have 3 depictions of Mary. I guess that she's an older woman, but she looks like an older Caucasian woman with, I think she's even got blonde hair. Like, she's not Caucasian. She doesn't have blonde hair. The eyes don't bother me. I know, again, people, talk about the eyes. I do think that they are meant to have that sense of otherworldly power, and that certainly works for me in most cases. This one does make it just look like she has blue eyes. So I think that this looks like many of the statues and the depictions that are seen of Mary in Western cultures, right? But it's definitely more of a Roman Catholic Mary versus sort of a Mary going back to the roots of things. I think that is one of the different things about that. Mary is most closely allied to the Middle Eastern moon goddesses. Like them, she is a creator goddess associated with both the heavens and the sea or other water. She is worshipped by Catholics as the moon of the church and as Stella Maris, the star of the sea. The moment of Annunciation is when she confronts the truth of her own great creativity, symbolized by Gabriel, the angel of truth made from fire. Of course, we have this, and her holding her son, which that whole, her having to live through the story of her son, I think is such a powerful message of mercy and compassion that we see of her. I really do like this this version of her, whereas these 2 are certainly more of a Catholic version of Mary that you would see. This is beautiful. It's just the artwork that westernized artwork, which is really how you see Mary. I don't think that Jewish people certainly are not, in terms of the Jewish religion, they're not going to be worshiping Mary. So I think that she would probably be considered a Catholic saint, or I think calling her goddess. I don't know that any Catholic would call her a goddess, for sure, but So so maybe that isn't completely a wrong way to have her depicted, simply because for many, many, many people who grew up Catholic, this would be the way that they would see her, even though, that's not what she would have in any way, shape, or form look like. Because again, we're not depicting the actual person Mary who was born and lived and died. This is that energy that has grown beyond the person and into an iconography. An iconography of Mary is generally always, I would say, being seen through the Roman Catholic lens. I probably like this in terms between these two. This is just because it's so iconic in terms of Mary and artwork. But I really resonate with this as just the mother, whereas this is more of the saint. This to me is the mother. Here we have Mary Magdalene. There are actually two. Some people believe that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' wife who bore him a daughter. Mary personifies the sacred vessel, the Holy Grail, embodies the mysteries of the divine feminine. Mary carries the sacred inner child within her body. So there are different apocryphal texts and things of that nature that call into question this idea of Mary and what relationship she may or may not have had with Jesus. I do think this idea of unconditional love for her works really well. I certainly always have that understanding of her loving Jesus unconditionally. Whether that was ever reciprocated or not is to me, and not really relevant. But I think that certainly works for the image of her. Maya is the Hindu and the Hindus and Buddhists of India worshipped Maya as the material universe, as mother of creation, weaver of the web of life, and as illusion. She is a virgin or maid part, so she's the maiden aspect of the three-part Kali, the three aspects being the Virgin Mother and Crone. Maya is also worshipped in Nepal, Tibet, Asia, and the Himalayas. Her special attributes are intelligence, creativity, water, and magic. Here she's depicted lifting the veils of earthly form to reveal the true nature of the universe. You definitely have this child aspect here. This to me, these are blonde curls. This to me has nothing, it doesn't speak of any of the cultures here whatsoever. To me this one's a complete miss. Next we have Minerva. You'd think of Minerva definitely with the owl here. Is there an owl? Yeah, there's owls in here, lots of different animals. Although Minerva, the Roman goddess of war and wisdom, is usually portrayed as equivalent to the Greek goddess Athena, she was originally an Etruscan goddess of dawn. She is revered as a goddess of wisdom, for the light of dawn typifies knowledge. She guides heroes in war and is patroness of all arts, crafts, skills, and medicine. So she takes Minerva back. And again, I do not know whether this painting was a painting of Minerva or not. And so that, makes some of these, of course, suspect. But I do like that this kind of highlights the fact that, yes, we have the Roman goddess of war, which we can certainly see here in the dress as well, which I quite like, but she pulls it back even further. And just that understanding that these goddesses were not static, that they moved through, and even the ones that didn't directly move through, I believe we are all part of this universal consciousness that connects a lot of these things, even though they have maybe met up with each other in a cultural shift. We also have 3, I think, Morgan Le Fays, which I thought was interesting to show. I love that it's here, but I certainly wouldn't have guessed that Morgan Le Fay would show up in 3 of the decks. Morgan Le Fay is commonly remembered as the enchantress half-sister of King Arthur. She is, in fact, the great queen goddess, Rue, which is true, Rue of the mystical island of Avalon, the fortunate island of the blessed dead, sometimes equated with the ancient Irish warrior, the goddess Morgan. There is one that does have the Morgan, actually. I should have probably pulled her out with this one. I do kind of see them as separate, but this is, this is just me. I'm pretty set in my feelings about the Morgan, and Morgan Le Fay, I guess, could be a folk aspect of the Morgan, I suppose, but I'm not convinced of that. I do see them as something separate, but that's just that's me personally. But she was this sort of sorceress energy, which I think this really depicts well. I think this really depicts well as where you can see the lady in the lake there, which I think is pretty cool. I'm blanking on the bird woman here. Celtic triple goddess of death and rebirth, appearing as that's supposed to be a death-giving hag. I thought it looks like a bird woman to me. Anyways, I do like that these show up. I really like this. I mean, she does look like a sorceress. She looks like a, comic book sorceress with her magical balls of fire here. So I think for this deck, it's probably as sorcery as we're going to get. She's probably my absolute favorite. Again, I'm biased to this deck, and I do really like this depiction as well, even with the bird woman. And I may read further and say, oh yeah, that makes sense why she's a bird woman. Next we have Nut. We're getting there. We have 2 for Nut. Expansiveness and mystery. So very different. Again, this depiction is kind of, kind of whatever. But let's see. Nut's energy is as wide as the sky, as big as the universe, and as bright as a star. Nut played the role of a sky goddess, which she does look like. You see the beautiful sky behind her. Wonder, unlimited possibilities. Stars, a woman arching over the earth, space, and the color blue are all things she's known for. I mean, she looks like a superwoman, like an Egyptian superwoman. Again, facially wise, she does not look Egyptian whatsoever. But that's kind of been the case of most of them. But at least you do have that powerful sky behind it. And I do like the term of expansiveness. And this one we definitely have more of an Egyptian feel to Nut there for sure. Next we have Oshun. This doesn't say how to pronounce them. I know that some people pronounce this as Ocean, which I know is not correct. Although I will say, I did come across some descriptions of how to pronounce it as Ocean. So, there is unfortunately now a bunch of misinformation going out and about. Ocean, which would be ocean, right? So this does, I would say that is saying to pronounce it ocean, but I'm fairly comfortable in saying that it should be Oshun. But certainly not ocean. I do like this depiction. It says the Brazilian Macumba goddess of the waters, rivers, streams, and brooks. And so I do love she's just literally laying in water. Whereas this is associated with lemon trees, I suppose. Let's see what it says. Now this has it as a Yoruban river goddess. Representation of nourishment. So yeah, I'm not sure why the lemons are here. It talks about being a river goddess, but there's nothing to do with a river here. So yeah, so that's kind of an interesting one there. This guidebook does not say how to pronounce it. I know that Colette Baron Reid did pronounce it ocean. This one does say how to pronounce it and does depict it as being pronounced as ocean. So that is too bad on both of those counts. Here we have Oya. Now look at these. They're both powerful. So that's the thing. Look at her. She is just regal and powerful, and even her clothing are turning into like whirlpools here, and the lightning looks like she's directing the lightning, which is really powerful looking. But she also looks, you know, powerful just in more of a warrior way. In Africa, Oya, pronounced Oya, Oya, Oya or Oya, Oya. They're saying Oya is a Yoruban goddess of the weather, especially tornadoes, lightning, destructive rain, female leadership. Yeah, I mean, you definitely see this here. She's also one of the most powerful of the Brazilian Macumba deities. When women find themselves in hard-to-resolve conflicts, she is the one to call to for protection. I mean, she does look like she will come in and protect you, right? There's power about it. She's very young looking, where she looks like that sort of matriarchal power. So, you know, they both have that sense of power about them. She has that sort of regal bearing that is really powerful. Next we have Pele. Now, I love this version of Pele. I love this Pele. This is a great Pele. Like, all four of these to me are really beautiful. I just love the color tone of this one. I think it's just beautiful. Racially, it's beautiful. I wish there would have been more cards like this in the deck. This was one of the newer ones that was placed in the US version. I believe this wasn't in the original one. I just wish there had been more like this. And also, I think the one of Bridget was one that was added in. Was it Bridget? The young Bridget. And I wish there would have been more like that and less of them all kind of looking like they're going to beat somebody, or even like Lilith. Like, there are some really good ones, but I love this. And I think this is stunning. The volcano there. I think this is really beautiful. I mean, she looks like she's doing a volcano dance, and she is just, it's gorgeous. All four of these are stunning. I don't really have anything bad or anything to say about them all. They are gorgeous. Persephone, very powerful Persephone, next to a very young Persephone, but her face does have a resoluteness here that I do think is quite beautiful. And she's kind of coming forth in the spring. But oh my goodness, look at this Persephone. Very powerful, just in a different way. And then the daughter and the dual aspects here. I quite like this version as well. Demeter's daughter, the maiden who was abducted by Hades, la 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 la. The Greek version of her myth reflects the usurpation of female mysteries by patriarchal mythology. But in this version of Persephone personifies the core, K-O-R-E, the maiden aspect of the goddess. Her myth exemplifies the cycles of nature, for when Persephone is underground, plants do not bloom, and when she returns to earth, spring ensues. She is the goddess of the soul, which this looks like the goddess of the soul. It's beautiful. Like, she's like the reigning queen of hell, right? Like, that's power. And then that's kind of like youthful coming up into the springtime. And that sort of has the dual aspects, and that's just your soul. So these are just different faces. Next we have Rihanna, who we have doubt, self-trust, sorceress. I do really like this image. She is a great goddess as worshipped by the well. She is the embodiment of life, death, and rebirth. For in her realm there is no death without regeneration. Her name actually means, derives from rigatona, which means great queen. She's a shapeshifter, and she can assume any form she wants. She often appears as a white horse. We have a white horse with a unicorn here. Again, I think she's one of the newer cards also. I just wish there had been more of these. And there's another one earlier I know was, although again, I really like Lilith. I wish there had been more like these particular cards, because you can really see where this could have been, again, I still think it's a powerful deck, but I think it could have been even better than what it is, in my opinion. Oops, I don't know why I put that down. She's amazing. I really love this and the shapeshiftery aspect. This one's, actually I like most of these cards, but this one's to me a little bit of a mess. It's not entirely, I mean, you can feel like she's on the Welsh countryside. This one just beautiful. Like, I love these three, but let's just give this a quick chance. Transformation, yeah, doesn't say anything about a unicorn, but it's a white horse, just has an extra horn in it. That's not my favorite of the depictions from that deck, which most of those I've enjoyed. Whoops, and there's Rihanna, I'm sorry. We have the animal horns here, we have the bird here. Welsh Queen of the Unseen Otherworld. She was a shapeshifter of many animals, but often transformed herself into a magical bird, which we see here. I mean, that's beautiful as well. That brings us to, let's see, this one has the pronunciation in it. Sarasvati is what it looks like, but that does not mean anything. Sarasvati. Sarasvati is what it looks like. The arts, mastery, expressing yourself through creative activities, knowledge. Her symbols include a white swan, a vina, musical instrument, a book of knowledge, and a book of knowledge of what you've seen. So you definitely have that seeing there. You have that there. You have the swan there as well. So I think these are both, to me, they look lovely. Again, I don't have a lot of knowledge of that goddess to speak to. Then we have Sedna in 4 of them. This is a real powerful, this one's come up quite a bit for me. This is Sedna, the one down there, who was a once beautiful Eskimo woman who lived with her father. None of the local suitors appealed to her, and she refused to marry until a falmer, a type of bird from across the sea, promised to take her to his home of luxury. This whole story ends up, her father throws her out of the sea after she had been treated poorly by people. She clung to the boat and he chopped off her fingers, which turned into the whales and the seals and all of the mammals of the sea. Sedna descended to Adlivium, the Eskimo underworld, where she now rules the dead. To ensure that she will continue to send food to hunters, shamans descend to visit her, comb her hair, and massage her mutilated hands. She is a reminder of the nourishing gifts that are to be found deep in the dark, cold places that we fear. I mean, that's a powerful image. Here you can see the beautiful ocean life mammals coming out of her very fingertips. Here you can see more, I think, before. It's infinite supply. You can't see that her fingers are cut off, but you can see the whales. It looks like her more before she obviously, when she was kind of dreaming, she wanted to, was dreaming of who she could, her father could find to marry her, and that didn't go too well. So it almost looks like that's her from beforehand. Whereas these really do feel more authentically to the story of the myth here. Here we can see a hook, which is interesting, an octopus or things kind of grabbing onto her. This is like, okay, it's not my favorite. These are definitely my favorite of these depictions. Then we have Sekhmet. She's very powerful. Again, all these you can say she's very powerful. She's actually really strong looking as well. This one says anger and rage, but I don't feel like she looks angry or rageful. I think she looks more like anger. Looks like anger. This one looks more like anger and rage than this, even though this keyword is here. It's not my favorite in terms of the keyword looking like the image. She does look very powerful there. And then this is one of the ones that I just, we had this whole, I'm not going to go into this too much because I already have a walkthrough of this. It's just one of those in this deck. I just don't like the modern motif, and again, that's the point of the artist. So it's not really, the artist has every right to depict it that way, but for me personally, using a deck, having a pussy hat, pink knitted pussy hat, just doesn't really work for me in a deck that doesn't have those on anything else except for the one with the kind of playbill face on it. It just stands out and it doesn't really mesh with the rest of the deck. So And not to mention some of the issues I have with that whole thing anyways. So again, I have a walkthrough. So that's not at all my favorite rendition of this. These certainly are more favored. And this one is probably my favorite just in terms of that powerful aspect. But she looks really powerful as well. And this one looks powerful also. I just don't see anger and rage there. We have Shakti with, I think, just 2. I do really like that image. I like all of the hair things that are going on here. I think it's really beautiful. The goddess, active, powerful, and vital, the animating force of the universe. Of course, you can see the chakras. To the tantric mystics, the ultimate union with Shakti happens at the moment of death. She is portrayed here seated within the luminous world egg and is protected by the serpent Kundalini, the emanation of her own divine energy. You can see that snake kind of going overhead. I mean, that's really powerful. This one I do think is really beautiful. Again, a lot of these are beautiful. You know, sort of not, sometimes neither here nor there, but this doesn't certainly interrupt for me the flow of, okay, that's, you know, there's Shakti. We have 2 Sheila Nanogs. Sheila. Apparently, you know, don't expect me to be able to speak anymore. Sheila Nahig. Sheila. Why do I say Nanog? There's a reason why, and it's not on the tip of my brain, and I can't think of it. Anyways, Tir Nanog. That's what I'm thinking of. Anyways, this is Sheila Nahig. Is how I think you pronounce that correctly. This is a Irish goddess of birth and death, and you'll find statuaries. I thought there was an image of one. Maybe one of the other ones have it, but they are often found, you know, in on church doorways. Like they would have like these, you know, figures with both hands kind of pulling apart the lady bits, or the yoni as it's said in this particular book. And you would find it on doorways and things of that nature. The Celts honored the sacred power of women's genitalia and used sculptures of such for protection. Here she's depicted as a hag, a woman of wisdom in all her glory. Whereas here you definitely have an older woman, but there is a sense of power here, and you certainly don't have her in her gateways, openings, but you don't have her in that typical structure that you would normally see. We have 2 with Sophia. No, 3 with Sophia. I think this is really beautiful. I don't know. I really don't know much about Sophia. Maybe this is the one that's supposed to be co-op Baron Reed. I don't know. I heard that somewhere, but this is another one where I don't think that the photograph blended very well into the background. Some of them do on this and some of them don't. Like this I do think works. Like that is still a photograph and you can certainly tell it, but it does go in with the rest of the surroundings better, and some don't as much. The unseen Sophia is the unbodied concept in many religions. As a goddess, she has similarities to the Egyptian goddess Isis. Sophia is the face of the divine feminine. She, the unseen, the unacknowledged, she who has been denigrated and ignored. So I believe that Sophia, for what little I know of Sophia, she is probably from the agnostics, but I could be wrong. Sophia in Greek, Hakma in Hebrew, Sapientia in Latin all mean wisdom. The Judeo-Christian God's female soul and source of his true power is Sophia. As goddess of wisdom, her faces are many. Black goddess, divine feminine, mother of God. To the Gnostic, that's what I'm thinking, not agnostic, sorry. To the Gnostic Christian, Sophia was the mother of creation. Her consort and assistant was Jehovah. Her sacred shrine, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Her symbol, the dove, represents spirit. She is crowned by stars, a Middle Eastern icon to indicate her absolute divinity. I mean, this is stunning. I'm not sure. This one to me doesn't quite work for me. Okay. So we have the Sphinx show up in 2 of the deck, so I thought I would show those. The challenge of the Sphinx here, and the Sphinx is an ancient moon goddess, the goddess of birth and death. There were lots of goddesses of birth and death, part animal, part human. She remains connected to her deep instinctual nature. It's almost like this is the strength card, like if we completely blended and united with our animal self, this is what we would be. Pretty cool. I mean, she's awesome. I think these both, to me, you know, look like a Sphinx. Spider Woman. I actually think that that's a beautiful image. And I think this is a stunning image. So it's just, this is a younger Spider Woman and an older Spider Woman. But I think this is obviously my favorite. I've worked a lot with this image, but I do think that's a really beautiful image. So I don't have anything negative to say there. Now, I put all of the Terras together. We have Terra for centering, which seemed to go a little bit more with the white Terra of sensitivity. And then we have the green Terra here of delegation, and then salvation, this green Terra. I have to say I like her face, but she looks like a modern person kind of dressed up to not be a modern person. That didn't quite blend as well for me, but I do like her face. She makes me smile when I see her. This is definitely my favorite. I think it's beautiful, but these are also beautiful as well. Tara, maybe, who originated in India, whose name means star, is a major goddess in the Tibetan pantheon. Self-mastery, mysticism. I don't think this really talks about the variations here that we see with the green and the white. So I would have to definitely look up some more, and I haven't read all of these on Terra or Tara. I will have to look into that further. But I mean, I think they all work. Again, she makes me smile. It just doesn't blend very well. That's just beautiful. So this is another one of the same sort. So this, she's got a beautiful face, right? Like, I love her face. You cannot, and well, you can, everybody can. I can't look at that picture and not want to smile back at her, right? I think she just looks beautiful, but I also love her. It's just totally different art style, obviously. And again, I do still feel like this is a modern, which it is, it's a modern woman that's been photographed, young woman photographed, you know, and put into this image, and you can tell that. But she makes you smile. That's a beautiful, I still love that image. Uzume is how this says to pronounce it. I'm not saying that that's the correct way, but that's how this one says. Uzume, ancient Japan's shaman goddess, is credited as being the one to entice a sun goddess out of the cave where she had been hidden. She did a body dance making fun of shamanic ritual. She exposed her breasts. She played with her genitals amidst the howls of laughter of the deities assembled. So loud and enticing was the uproar she created that Amaterasu's curiosity got the better of her, and she came out from her cave. Begins her comet dance in your life to tell you it is time to nurture homes of laughter. So we can see all of that being depicted there. I mean, I like them both, just for, you know, different ways. I do think this is a great depiction of the Valkyries, at least of how I see the Valkyries. I absolutely love this as well. Bird goddess is one of the most ancient goddesses. The Valkyrie, a northern European goddess, is a representation of this goddess as death wielder. The bird guise of the Valkyrie is that of the raven, long associated with death and magic. So clearly, I mean, come on, that's just so stunning. This is a little bit more of that, you know, depiction that we would again think of in a graphic novel, but I do think, you know, you see it, and I think you do think Valkyrie. Viking warriors on the battlefield, what flashed before their eyes was most likely a beautiful yet terrible winged woman, often on a mighty flying horse, eyes flashing, singing a song of blood and glory. Again, with all of the helmets and the winged, you know, it's a bit much, but it does speak to the energy of Valkyrie. We have Venus and Venus. I mean, I think that works really beautifully with Venus. Roman goddess of fertility, love, sex, and beauty. I mean, it's just a beautiful image, and it works really well. I really love this because it looks like she is like being birthed. She evolved from an early Italian nature goddess, bringer of spring blossoms and vines. I think it's beautiful. They're both, I think they're both beautiful. We have two that are Vesta, which are of the home. The goddess of the hearth resides in her circular temple embodied within the sacred fire. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I'll have to, makes me want to look it up to see if there is a connection between Vesta and Hestia, because they're both kind of that hearth fire energy. So it's possible that those are connected in some way. I mean, this is really beautiful. She looks like, you know, I like her clothing that's here, and having the pot here. So this is a beautiful image, but it doesn't really speak to me of even being on fire or anything like that. It's just a really pretty person. This does kind of speak. She just looks kind of Roman goddess there. White buffalo woman, again, very powerful version. This is another where I feel like the image doesn't blend well with, I think that she's lovely, but it doesn't quite blend as well. The components don't, she doesn't, and the keyword is reverence, and I just feel like her face should be less that kind of, I mean, it's a cute face. It's kind of like, hey, I got a secret. Come here, let me talk to you. But it doesn't feel like a reverence face. It doesn't really go with that keyword. But the same thing here. Like, this doesn't go with the keyword of peace. So I kind of feel like both of these mix the mark. Although I will say, you think about the peace pipe, so the components are here. I just feel like the artwork isn't meshing as well with the rest of the thing, and I don't feel like her face, while lovely, has a face of reverence about her. And I definitely don't think that she has a face or anything about this that speaks to peace. Although there was obviously war before there was peace. Okay, our last goddess here that is, you know, that we have more than one of to look at is Yamaya. I'm gonna look. Yamaya is how this deck is saying to pronounce it. Let's just peek while we can to see if this one concurs with that pronunciation. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's absolutely correct, but it's at least a way to try to get close. Now, it looks like actually this one has a couple, because this has it spelled Yamanya. So Yamanya or Yamanji, Yamanja or Yamanji. They have this Y pronounced as a J. So definitely some variation there. Doing a quick Google search, we definitely get Yamaya, so that's what I'm going to go with for the moment. You definitely get from Yamaya, there is a cross-cultural, so you do have the African, but you also have a Brazilian, and I think that you can see obviously a more African look here, a little bit more Brazilian look here, and this looks a little more African. That could actually be also a mix between the two, which is lovely. I actually think both of these are beautiful. Again, this deck focuses on the really power aspect of the goddesses, and I think this one actually works. It's one of my favorites in terms of it. She looks powerful, but she doesn't look over the top like she's going to bash her head in or something. And you do have the feeling of waves, even though the color tones are certainly not that blues of water. You still get the movement of water and waves. So for the color palette of this deck, I do feel like that these all work quite well. So that is the last of our comparisons. Now, let me know what you think about those. I will say this one is a surprisingly, I don't. I have the Guardian Angel, because it reminds me of my grandmother, that I love. I think that might be my only During Virtue deck right now. But I've heard good things about this deck, and I can certainly understand why. I think that they actually did a great job with this. And I mean, there are a couple misses, but for the most part, I think that's a real hit. This for me is just a massive hit. This has some misses and some hits. What you're getting is a lot of beautiful faces, right? A lot of beautiful women that for the most part, I think can represent the goddesses. There's some misses with, you know, I think use another African goddess. You don't need to put the African woman into the Aphrodite. Just, you know, bring up some beautiful other African goddesses to pull them into the deck. And I don't think that the images always blend into the backgrounds, but some of them just make me smile. Some of them are real powerful. There are definitely some misses. And there's definitely the problem of Kali, although, again, I don't hate this image by any means, but more in the language, to be honest, of assuming that the Kali in her traditional look is not fiercely beautiful. I do agree that Kali in her traditional aspect that I have certainly seen can be fierce and fearsome, but needing to be careful about labeling a particular goddess, especially in a living, I mean, it should be any time, so I don't know, you shouldn't even say especially in a living, there are people who, it's a living religion with living worshipers of this particular goddess. It's a vibrant, ongoing culture and religion that would be working with this energy. That would be extremely offensive. So I think it was more heavily on the language and about it in the guidebook and some of the video responses. So hit or miss, but all in all, and again, I haven't done a full review of this. Probably my least favorite of the guidebooks, but again, we'll go into details when I do individual reviews. Talked about that. This is what it is, right? This is very much a sort of graphic novel, novelization style of the goddesses. However, some of them I really loved, and some of them I did not. And again, I think that in a atmosphere of which there's so much soft colors and things, these kind of strong, it was empowering to pull these out and be like, okay, yeah, there's a bam, there's a kick butt version here. So I love this a lot more than I did when I was going in, which is good. This is probably would stay my favorite. This is probably a close second. Again, there were a couple misses here, and we haven't looked through all the cards yet. I haven't done a walkthrough, but I do really love the tone of this deck. I think that, other than the back, I do think that a lot of intention was placed into honoring the goddess energies that are found in this particular deck. As I said, this artwork isn't as much my style. There were some hits and there were some misses for me. But the artwork is beautiful, and so I do think if you like this more modern, I mean, that's just stunning. If you like this more modern rendition of the goddesses, this is certainly an option. In terms of the guidebooks, I like them for different reasons. I actually quite like the Stacey DeMarco guidebook. I like the shadow side, the regular side. I do like that there is some of the mythology in there. I do like that the symbols are in there. And I do like that a glossary of pronunciation is in there as well. I will need to, before I do a full walkthrough, read through the whole things to really get a feel for them. I do like the mythological section in the Goddess Oracle here. And I do like that the pronunciation is right there in it. And I actually do like some of these poems that I have read. So again, I'll have to be reading through this more closely before doing the walkthrough. But I do like that aspect of this guidebook. I do again like that there's a piece about the actual goddess. There is a pronunciation guide in there. There's a message from them, and then there are some more, like, here's some meanings that this could actually come up within a particular reading. So I'll have to, again, before doing a walkthrough, read through this. But this is actually a handy little guidebook. This is probably my least favorite because there is no pronunciation. There isn't a blurb just giving us a key information about the mythology. I do like that there is an alignment message, and how can you use this energy to bring you things in your life into alignment that might need aligning. I actually do quite like that section there. So again, apparently there is a supplemental material you can get with more on the mythology, but I'm just looking at the books themselves. So I think this book could have used, I just did a cursory search for each of the goddesses, and I think that even slightly more research could have gone into this particular guidebook to bring it in to, I think, more in alignment with some of the other ones. And then, of course, this set, I really like the text on the back of this. Let me take that back. I don't particularly like that there are texts on the back. I would have preferred the text to be separate. However, I like the text that's used. What I like about this deck is that very often the creators have, I've got these all whopper-jawed now, very often the creators have taken the goddess back as far as possible. So if it's a goddess with many incarnations, it kind of pulls it back into sort of that oldest rendition that they're aware of the goddess, and I quite like the way that that's done. Now, image-wise, I think because this is taken from a body of work, there are a couple times in which it may not be an exact fit, but the energy is so powerful. I just love this deck, so I am definitely biased here. And then we have the guide information on the back. I do like the Rumi quotes. I do like that there is a historical aspect to, at least focusing us in on the history and where the goddess has come from. I really appreciate that. I know that these are oracle decks, and it's on us if we're going to really get into working with goddess energy. The point of these books cannot be, look at even just the size of these. The point of these books cannot give you a full understanding of each one of these goddesses. And so if we are really falling into working with goddess energy, I do think that it is on us to do that work as well. But giving us at least that starting out point, I think, is so important when we are dealing with other cultures, other mythologies, other time periods. So that's that. I want to very quickly, just because I know it might probably the longest video ever, but I do think that this is something people have asked a lot. I do want to do a quick skim through the other goddesses that were individual to each deck, because I do think that's interesting. This deck, which is the Goddess Guidance Oracle cards, actually had quite a few that I hadn't heard of. And that's on the box. I do like Irene being there. I liked Guinevere being there. Isolde, so you definitely get some of the Celtic Welshy things. Mawu, I have not looked this up, so I shouldn't even say it. I do like the image there. I've heard of her, definitely heard of her, not heard of her, heard of her. So I did think that there, of course, all of these are going to be different that I'm going to show you because there was no correspondence, unless I've missed one or two. I'm not going to say I didn't. But it's interesting to see the different ones that were chosen here to round off each deck. I'm gonna not show it because just so we can see it. We have like Eagle Woman, Iten, Eve, Flora, Hel, Ahina, Caltes, the Lady of the Lake. I love the Lady of the Lake was here. Actually, I do think there was another Medusa in, I think this deck perhaps. I love that Psyche is here and Selene. Of course, this is a deck that I've used a lot. This does also have two decks that are just sort of High Priestess energy and Triple Goddess energy. I don't actually usually use these because I like just using the specific goddesses, but those are there as well. I did feel when I first started to work with this deck that there were goddesses, even like Sedna, that I had never heard of and I really enjoyed getting to know. This one, now this is the one that there could be some overlaps just because I very quickly put this in. But this actually had quite a few that were, now there's the Medusa, so let's just, here is Medusa. And now Medusa in this deck, she shows as her Pegasus. When Medusa was slain, the winged horse Pegasus sprang from her blood. The Greeks portrayed Medusa as a horrifying gorgon, an ugly woman with snakes for hair. Anyone who looked at her face was turned to stone. Yet her name has the same root as medicine and measure, and derives from a Greek word meaning to protect and to rule over. Medusa is a moon goddess, a triple-headed great goddess in her death aspect. She is associated with blood, so to meet her is to meet the mysteries of moon blood or menstrual blood, sacred and terrible. In many mythologies, the source of life. So I do like that they, talked about those aspects there. Definitely have a powerful rendition of her here. And this talks a little bit about how it actually became Medusa. So like that as well. Algae, the Vestal Virgin, Santa Muerta. This, I think, was the only one, unless, again, I've missed something with Santa Muerta in it. Nemesis. I think I might have seen Nemesis. Again, I kind of pulled this Sybil. I like that that's there. Anima Mundi is here. Sleeping Beauty. I thought that was interesting. From a fairy tale, folk tale was brought in. I quite liked that actually. Astarte, and Frigg, which you could argue is an aspect of Freya, or at least there is a lot of overlap between Frigg and Freya. Now we're looking at the goddess power cards. I do like some of the ones like I have not heard of. I liked that there was Branwen. Danu, actually, we did have Danu overlapping with Danu Bridget, so you could kind of, but she has Bridget and Danu. And again, I do see those as separate. Ellen, Gula, Iris, I think also might have been in there. Not heard of her. Mama Killa, Mama Kocha. I do really like that image. I think that's really powerful. That's a really powerful image as well, especially this past connotation. I do really love that. Does have the Morgan. I'm really saddened by the fact that this is the only deck that has the Morgan in it. I do actually like this rendition of Nike, as well as Nyx, as well as Pavarti. This is beautiful of Ray. So these are very beautiful images. Right, so there's definitely some hits and misses in this deck, but there are some really beautiful images. And again, I do think there are some misses, though, for sure. Although I can say that with really all of the decks, I suppose, because again, our ideas of or ideals for each of these goddesses might be very different. This one, I think, had the least non-overlaps. Pomona, Katesh, the Sirens in general. Vesta, we did have Vesta, so I should have brought her out. But again, this is home. Like, she's defending home, I suppose, but everybody's in defense. I do really like the strength. I mean, that's just powerful. I love this particular card. I think that goes. Helen of Troy, I think, is amazing. Joan of Arc, I think, is also amazing. Like, she is kicking butt. And then the Muses. So I have come to appreciate this deck for what it is. And then lastly, we have the Goddess Oracle, which also doesn't have too, well, it's got a nicer number. I do not appreciate this, and I'm just going to throw it out. It just, they slide under there and you're going to ruin your cards. That's really powerful. Corn Woman, Durga. I like the story behind that. I like the energy of this. I love this image. Lady of the Beasts. Love this image as well. This is a beautiful deck. I was surprised that there were not more with Pachamama, if I'm mispronouncing that, or if I'm saying that correctly. And I'm really surprised there weren't more. I have another deck that's not all goddesses or gods, but it has that, and it's been a real powerful card for me, or figure for me, and I'm really surprised there weren't more. So yeah, I do really love, I guess my favorites are probably these two. But then I'm actually quite pleased with this one as well. And I'm found a newfound love for this. I do think, you know, I like some of these images here. I love the cardstock. I love the color palette of Jenna's artwork. I think that, you know, there's a place for it. I think goddesses can be represented by just some beautiful women. There's just some hits there, as we've talked about. Again, going to go over these separately in their own walkthroughs. But there you have it. I hope that this helps in some way to be able to, if you're thinking about goddess decks, I think seeing the way that many of these decks take different approaches to each one of the goddesses. And truthfully, even as you are researching goddesses, you will find there are many different stories that are associated with the goddesses. And so even in the choosing of the myths, there isn't just one. Some of these are very ancient, and the stories surrounding them and the iconography surrounding them can shift and change, and you can get competing and even completely opposing stories about a single goddess. So I think that the depiction and what you choose to focus on could wildly vary between decks authentically, just because of the scope of some of the stories that are surrounding some of these different manifestations of these goddesses. So we have to also keep that in mind when looking. And obviously, if you have a personal relationship with a goddess, then, you know, looking into how a deck portrays that particular goddess is going to be really important, because I can see then where that's going to be really key for you. Okay, I wish that this is the last thing I want to say before wrapping up, is I wish that I could be doing a similar video on god decks or god-based decks. But that is simply a lack right now. We have the one god deck that is goes along with the goddesses and sirens. So I'll probably do a walkthrough of those two decks together. But other than that, that is the only deck that I am aware of that is just, you know, based on the gods. And so that type of thing I do think is lacking. And what is, I think, lacking as well are good solid decks that reference gods and goddesses in a balanced way. I'm not saying there aren't any, but there aren't many, if at all. So there we have it. I'm going to wrap this up because this is an extremely long video. I hope that this helps. If you have a favorite of another goddess deck out there, or if you know of a god deck out there other than this one, please put that into the comments and I will be excited to hear about those.